Hi, I'm Cody Alexander with MatchQuarters.com. In this clinic, we're going to talk about different defensive back techniques that you can utilize in man, zone, and press, when to use them, where to use them, with some film examples to go along with each one. The main two things that you need for a DB is your stance. Is it open? Is it closed? And that's the two that we're going to focus on. The nice thing is your closed stance is also your press stance. So going from a pedagogy standpoint, it's once you teach these two stances and the techniques that come off of them, then they translate to any kind of coverage that you're running, whether it be man, zone, or press. This is an open stance. This is where I start. I think it's easier for DBs to press, and it's easier to learn that technique. I think it takes a lot of technique. It takes a lot of skill to work in open stance. And so that's why I always start with off coverage. You start off and you work down. I think the problem that we get as teaching young DBs is that we feel like in an open stance or in an off position that it's just too hard for them. And then it's all athletic ability and it's all skill. And that's not necessarily true. When you teach a DB from the open stance and then from an off position, they have to be technically sound. So I would rather teach the techniques first, the hard things first. That way, then when we get to the press, then their eyes are already right. Their body leverage is already right. Their positioning is already right. And so then it just translates into a better DB. Again, start with the hard and work to the press. I think too many times DB coaches start with the press, and then when they want to go off and they need to go off, the kids aren't technically sound enough. They don't understand eye control, body control, position maintenance. Where do I need to be for that off technique? So again, I start with an off technique. That's why we're starting this clinic off with an off technique. And the first thing that I teach is an open stance. Now, it's a heel to toe stance. So if you see in this picture, the toe of my back foot is even with the heel of my front foot. Now, for a corner, I always want the outside foot up. I want to protect the outside. Okay. And I want to funnel everything inside, because where's my help? Most of the time my help's out here. Now, the only time I would want to flip my foot is if I really want to just I really want them to go outside, which to me, I would rather have it to where I can break on any inside route, because that's the most dangerous thing. And then it becomes alignment, which I'll discuss here in a second. So heel to toe stance, slight tilt inside. I prefer a tilt. I think when you stay square, what ends up happening is that the DBs are too inclined to man turn all the time. If I start right here, I'm just going to, in square stance, I'm just going to man turn all the time. And I've had that issue with DBs before when they want to just get in a square stance. What ends up happening too is if they just backpedal out, they end up stepping out, and then the next thing you know, they turn their hips one way, and then now they're in trouble. At least with this tilted slant stance, we can zone turn. We can see the ball inside. We are already open for the in breaking route. Remember, anything outside the numbers, that's a low percentage throw, unless you've just got a dude. And if the offense has a dude, and I don't have somebody to match up with them, we were going to be in trouble anyway. But in breaking routes, and this is what we've seen with the evolution of offense football, is that a lot of things that we're getting these quick throws in breaking routes, running away from leverage. And so for me as a DB coach, I want to make sure that we inhibit those throws. We're constraining the space inside. We're forcing low percentage throws outside, and that helps with that tilt. So if any in breaking route, all I got to do is plant and drive. My hips are already pointed inside. If I get a vertical route, I just got to turn and run in a zone turn. So shoulders are square. And I think that's the biggest point, is that the shoulders need to be square. You can have a tilt stance, but your shoulders better be square. With the shoulder square, I now have a four-way go. And that's important to me. The moment that I turn completely sideways and I start creeping out, shuffling out, clicking my heels out, the only place I can go is now turn and run vertically. And what tends to happen is I consider it like a sail, right? So your shoulders are your sail. If I turn my shoulders, that's where I'm going to go. So if these shoulders were to get in the same position as my hips and I were to be going completely vertical, I would end up working this way. Okay. And that's what we don't want. We don't want those shoulders to rotate this way, get my hips rotated this way, because then I'm going to start working that way. The moment I start working that way and the receiver makes a break in now, I have to take several steps before I can regain composure. And that's not what I want. I don't want to be late on an in-breaking route. Remember, the entire purpose of defense is to constrain space. Low percentage throws are outside. I want to force those low percentage throws. I want to give the illusion of space outside. I want to give the illusion of the gift outside, but I am going to break on anything inside. Now, the final thing in the coaching point here is the tuck position. As you can see, my knees are bent. My chest is big. You can see my chest, my nose is over my toes. And that's what I tell my kids all the time, nose over toes. And you're not going to get out of position, because all you got to do is literally lean forward or rock those shoulders back. And then now you're accelerating in one position or the other. And it keeps that base underneath of you. You know, I call, you make it easy for the kids to remember. Most of the kids play Madden. So I tell the kids all the time, you want to keep those feet in your Madden ring. Don't let them go out. And the best way to do that is keep your nose over toes in that tuck position, like you're sitting in a chair. And that's kind of how I teach it. It's like, hey, let's sit in a chair. How would you sit in a chair? Now, another way you could teach it is, hey, it's the same thing as if we're teaching a power clean. Right? It's the same position if we're teaching a power clean. It's the same position if we're teaching a deadlift. It's the same position if you were about to make a vertical jump. It's the same position as if you were getting in a 2-point stance to run in the track. Now, to me, we're trying to make it as relatable to the kids as we most possibly can. So it's also another way to reinforce why we do explosive activities in the weight room and on the field and through the track. So to me, this stance right here is a universal stance that you see. Now, the only difference that we're going to have as a DB is that I'm going to have my feet kind of show a little bit narrower than shoulder width apart, and then I'm going to have my heel to toe stance. So let's go over the different techniques that we have for the open stance. So again, talking about outside, this is where we want to funnel the receiver. I have my receiver here. You can see that I am inside eye of the receiver. You can see that I'm in a tuck position. I've got a nice tilt here, but my shoulders are square. Okay, eyes on the inside hip, which I'm looking right here. This is going to be my aiming point. And then I'm going to protect the inside. This is where I'm going to protect. I don't want anybody getting outside. Remember, if he wants to release outside, all I have to do is fade back into it in his own turn, and I can cap that very easily. So this is an open stance versus the receiver. Again, typical alignment, top of the numbers. I'm going to be inside eye of that receiver, making sure that I'm breaking on any in-breaking route. Okay, open stance versus a wide alignment. This is what we're starting to see now, whether this is into the boundary, or this is one of those Baylor system where everybody's pushing everything out as wide as they possibly can. What I teach my kids here is, look, we're going to stay connected to the numbers. I don't want to leave the numbers. They're inviting me out here for a reason. They're creating space by moving out there. They're either creating space inside, or they're creating space for them to run and get you out of the way or create a screen. So why is the receiver reducing their space on the sideline? Okay, now this is an even more low percentage throw because of the space that they have. They don't have a lot of space out here. He literally has one way. If he wants to run a vertical, he's got one thing that he can do, and that's literally run straight. He can't go any further than that. If you've ever visited like a higher level field, like an NFL field or a college field, they have what's called the red line. And the red line is usually, if you have a soccer field on your practice field, that red line is usually where the goalie box is on the outside. And just imagine an imaginary red line going all the way down the field. That's where that would be. A lot of times what that is used for is for receivers to know how far away from the sideline they are, to condition them to know, hey, if I'm going to run a vertical route towards the sideline, this is where I need to stack. I need to stay on this red line. So as a corner, I need to understand that as well. I want to cut off the inside, right? He only has one direction. So I'm going to know when he's wide alignment like this, I'm going to know instantly if he's going vertical. Because if he's going vertical, he can only do one thing, that's run straight. Okay, now I can compress that from an inside out alignment. My thinking right now is he's trying to dig me out. He's trying to get inside. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and cut him off. So here's what an open stance looks like from the inside. Okay. I'm staying connected with the numbers. My thinking right now is, why are they reducing space for themselves? Okay. They're either trying to get me to widen out so they can run inside. Okay. I want to square up just a little bit. Maybe put that toe inside the heel. Okay. More of a flat stance, because again, I want to break on any in breaking route. And then if he does go vertical, all I have to do is shuffle, get my hands on him and force him out. Okay. I'm thinking slants. I'm thinking quicks. I'm thinking hitches. I'm thinking some sort of quick screen. And I'm thinking run right now as a DB. Now, this is something that I feel like coaches don't cover, yet we expect the kids to know. And you'll see it on Saturdays. You'll see it on Fridays all the time, is you get a reduction by the receiver. So again, I've got the receiver. He's off the numbers. He's now what I would call apex. So I think the divider, I teach the divider as the apex between the hash and the top of the numbers. Okay. And make sure you explain to your kids what apex is. Okay. Apex means middle. Anytime they cross that midline, that imaginary line between the hash and the top of the numbers, we're going to line outside. And I've had this happen on multiple occasions with DBs. They think they just get in that, I'm always supposed to be inside. I'm always supposed to be inside. Well, now you align inside right here. And the issue is, look at all this space out here. They're reducing for two reasons. They're running outside or they're running across the field. Those are the only two reasons why they would ever reduce on this. Okay. Or they're trying to get to your safety on a block. That's it. So those are the two ways that they're attacking you through the pass, and the one way they're attacking you through the run. So as a corner, I've got to understand the divider rule. The moment that he becomes aligned inside that apex, I'm now going to line outside. And it's going to be outside eye of the receiver. If it's even further down, I can kind of widen out just a little bit. Okay, eyes on the outside hip instead of the inside hip. Does that outside hip turn to me? Okay, I need to keep working outside. I need to leverage that outside. I'm thinking fades or I'm thinking crossers, and I'm going to funnel the receiver inside. They've already reduced their space. They've constrained their own space by moving him down. I'm not going to give him instant access to outside. Remember, our job as a DB is to constrain the space of the receiver and not give them free access. Okay, like I tell my DBs, there are no free lunches when we are on the field. We are not giving the receivers anything for free. Okay, if they are reducing their alignment, we probably are going to have a safety on the hash. I'm going to funnel him to my help. Okay, if he's in here, he's trying to get outside, I'm going to align outside so that he can't do that. Again, creating that natural barrier. It's kind of like basketball. Again, most DBs, most skill kids have played basketball, right? And so I'm teaching them, hey, well, are you just going to let them go straight to the hoop? No, you're not. You're going to use your body presence to get them to go where you want. If they're a right-hand dominant dribbler, I'm going to position myself on their right hand so that now that person has to go left. Okay, it's no different as a DB. If they're reducing their space, they're either trying to get outside or they're going underneath right now. Well, if they go underneath right now, I need to be in a better position to then open up and see vision point what is going on inside, right? I need to be able to see that. So if he goes underneath right now, that means somebody is working back out at me at some different kind of level. Okay. Offenses are built on levels. Okay. They're built on an underneath, an intermediate, and a shot. Okay. Everything is horizontally stretched. It's just where are they putting that? Okay. Where are they putting the stretch? Is it in the middle of the field? Is it on the sideline? And who are they trying to stretch? Who are they trying to high low? So for me as a DB, again, outside eye of the receiver, eyes on the outside hip. Okay. Change your vision point. I'm thinking fades or I'm thinking crossers. I'm thinking some way that they're where are they going because of the way that they constrain space. And then my main objective is to funnel that receiver inside to my help, which everybody should be in here. Okay. So let's talk about the techniques that go with this. So alignment is the first priority, right? Let's get lined up correctly. Let's make sure we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. We've constrained the space of the receiver. Now let's talk about the technique part. So right here, you're going to see me, I'm in my open stance, and I'm just going to work what I call a slide technique. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put all my mental weight on the front of my foot, okay, on the ball of my foot, which I always tell them that's the pad of your foot, okay? That's where your foot, your toes meet your foot. I'm going to put all my mental weight on that front foot. So all I have to do is press and work vertically. Okay, so right here, you can see I've got all of my weight right here. Once I go, all I'm going to do is step, replace. You can actually see where my foot, so my foot's right about right there. You can see, boom, my front foot hits on the exact same place where my back foot was. And all that is a tempoed step, replace, step, replace, step, replace, step, replace. Now, as you can see, my shoulders, you can kind of see this. My shoulders are staying square and they don't move. Hips stay the same right there. So as I do that, now I can get out into more of a pedal. Once I feel like it's like they're going vertical, now I can get into more of a pedal and I stay right there. Okay. Hands stay close to the knees. I can quickly bring them up if I need to. Some teach it as keep your hands in a 90 degrees, hands on the table. My thinking with that, and I've kind of changed my idea on that. I've always said, put your hands on the table. I think some kids, if they're trying to do it with a straight arm, they have issues with it, then put them on the table. I think some kids, when they try and get those elbows out, okay, they try and get these elbows up and out over here. That's when you want to get that nice tuck. Good ways to do that is if you're having troubles with the elbows coming out, is to put just get some hand towels and put hand towels in their armpits. That keeps them visual. What I tell them is those elbows need to rub the rib cage, just like we're running track. Okay, just like we're running track, elbows on that rib cage, rubbing that rib cage, and then keep those steps, step, replace, step, replace. Notice how I'm not leaving my Madden ring. I'm not leaving my Madden ring. You could put a Madden ring around me right now, and I'm not going to leave it. Boom, 2, 3. Okay. Once I get through the third step, that's when I can start getting into a pedal. Okay. Now, not every DB is good at backpedaling. I think that's another issue as DB coaches that we need to look in the mirror and we need to ask ourselves, can my guys actually backpedal? If they can, then I teach a slide to backpedal. If they can't, I tell them, you better stay in that slide the entire time, or you better be turning and running somewhere, braking on it. That's the only time we're going to leave it. The issue that I get with backpedaling is, one, it is a skill. It's something that has to be taught, and it has to be gone over and over again. It's like running form. Okay. We all, during the off season, we work. What's the first thing that we start working on? It's running form. Guys, we got to clean up our running form. We got to get the arms right. We got to get the 390s right. We got to get the toe up. We got to get the knee up. We got to get everything going forward. Put the book on the head, everything relaxed, going forward, everything looking nice. Okay. We do the exact same thing as a DB coach. We've got to make sure that we are keeping our back pedal maintenance and our techniques solid throughout the year, and especially in the off season. So if your kids are having trouble backpedaling, that should be the very first priority that you go over. It's a transition tool. That's kind of the big thing. I think it was a couple of years ago, everybody's like, oh, well, Nick Saban doesn't do the back pedal. Okay, you're right. He doesn't teach them to come out of a back pedal, right? He teaches this exact same thing that I'm doing right here, which is a slide. Some call it a scooch. Their safeties do it. Their DBs do it. I know Carl Scott, who's with the Minnesota Vikings. I saw him at a clinic one time, and he spoke on, why would I not want my plant foot in the ground? Okay, as we are progressing in football, it's quick throws, underneath, run action, right? I want to be able to break on the ball quickly underneath. And I liken it like this. If I'm going to take a handoff in track, I'm going to have my feet angled. All I've got, and it's the same thing here as a DB. If I need to turn and go right now, I'm already half tilted. All I have to do is square that toe, rip this arm down, and punch with this arm. And now I'm going back vertically. And so that's why I teach this, because I think that's the biggest thing DB coaches are always worried about is, man, don't give up the fatal, don't give up the fatal, don't give up the fatal. And we overcoach it to the point where these kids just start getting scared. They bail out. And I think with the back pedal, you're even more inclined to bail out. So again, I teach this as a slide. Okay, step replace, step replace, step replace. For 3, get your 3 read steps. Okay, 1, 2, 3 into a back pedal transition. And I think if you can teach that right there, everything that you do technique wise, whether it's a drill, whether it's a daily must, whether it's training, is everything that we do is going to come from these 3 steps, these 3 read steps. If you're good at backpedaling, great. You got to get through your 3 read steps. That way your feet are in the ground. Not everybody is great at backpedaling, and not everybody can transition smoothly. But if my feet are constantly in the ground, 1, 2, 3, within that 3, if I need a break and drive, I'm there. My nose is over my toes. I could plant right now, bring that knee up and drive down on anything underneath right now. I'm in good position. I'm in a nice tuck. I didn't come up. You can see how my shoulders stay static. My hips stay static. Okay. You can see where my foot lands. They land in the exact same spot, step replace. Use that as a good visual for your DBs when you're teaching this. Now, this is what I call a proactive step. This is a little bit more pronounced because I want to do it. I want to make sure that we understand and we see it. Don't need such a big step. This is more of a red zone step where I'm really protecting that inside. Okay. Probably when I'm teaching this in terms of just position maintenance is as I'm aligned on the receiver, let's say the receiver's at the top of the numbers, I just want to take about a little 6-inch step. This is a little bit over 6 inches, but you can see how my feet are going to end up in the same place. 1, 2, 3, I'm getting through. So you can see how my feet stay the same. 1, 2, 3, right there. Notice how my shoulders stay exactly where they're supposed to be. Okay, the only thing you can see a slight rotation backwards, but you can tell that my nose is over my toes. I'm only rotated backwards a little bit because I'm moving backwards, but you can see all my mental weight is on that front foot. Okay, eyes are down. Hands stay in a tuck position. My elbows are connected to my rib cage, right? And so why do we take a proactive step? What's the most dangerous throw? It's an inside throw, right? So it's the highest percentage throw. So what I'm going to do is just ensure that if in an off stance, I'm going to ensure that he can't dig me out from the beginning. Because that's the worst thing that can happen to me right now is that receiver takes an inside stem and now he works to the inside hip and now he's got full control. It's basketball, right? It's basketball on grass. He's now boxed me out. All he's got to do is put his outside hip on my inside hip and I'm screwed. So for me, that's why we go over this proactive step. And we teach this. I want to take that nice step inside first. That way I get position maintenance right here and I'm staying right where I need to be. Now, let's go to the red zone, right? In the red zone, I want to make sure that they can't take that slant's taken away. So if I'm going to play off coverage in the red zone, okay, let's say it's a 3rd and 7. They're on the 15. We don't want to give them a quick throw strike outside just to the corner of the end zone. We want to protect ourselves from that. So we're going to play a little bit loose in kind of that middle range red zone. This is a great way of doing it. I want to take a proactive step, hard proactive step inside, cut that slant. Notice how I'm staying square. So if he does this and he works back out, now I just have to feather back outside to cap that. I'm not out of position. Notice how my shoulders are square. I may be tilted this way, but my shoulders are square. So if he does break, all I got to do is put that foot in the ground and break and drive on anything working outside. So again, everything is about being able to break and drive. Notice tuck stays the same and I can plant and drive on that at any time. So what I always teach, first thing I teach is the stance. Then let's understand our alignment. Then I go ahead and teach the slide. And then from there, I add that little proactive step because I think for kids, they make this big proactive step first and they hop. We don't want to hop to it. We want to make sure that we're taking that nice, easy, proactive step and we're working back. That's the key, right? Nice, easy, proactive step and working vertical with it. I don't want to keep working at an angle, because if I keep working at an angle, I'm now working away and I'm giving space to that receiver. All I'm doing with this proactive step is ensuring that when I take a step inside, that they cannot stem me inside. I'm going to beat them to the stem. That's essentially what we're doing with that proactive step. So let's look at it versus a receiver. Okay, notice I'm inside eye. I'm going to get in a nice tuck. I'm sliding off. He gives me an outside move. He speed releases me, gives me a jab. Okay, jab here, right there, stay outside. Notice how I'm staying connected to his hip. He's fading out, so now my shoulders can turn. Okay, this is what we call a zone turn. If, for instance, if he's really going fast, all I've got to do now is turn, get my head around, pin the hip. Okay, I'm in good position right here off of this stem. You can see my shuffle. Now I transition into a back pedal and I stay on top, stay connected. About right here is when you can see my elbow. I'm up, my elbow would come around. I'd get my head down. So again, make sure that you're keeping those shoulders. You can see how I stay in the tuck the entire time. I'm not standing up. You can see how my nose is over my toes. And I'm keeping those feet in the ground even when I'm pedaling. I'm not bringing them up. Everything's fast, okay? Working to that cutoff from the beginning. So again, now we're putting it all together. Now I'm going to be inside alignment, inside eye. I got my staggered stance. I got my my open stance, okay? Eyes are down. I'm looking at the hip. Notice how my eyes don't come up, okay? Once I feel him fading out, I'm going to fade out and I'm going to work right to stack them. Okay, so again, I always teach the fade off of this because I think the zone turn's the hardest thing to do. What ends up happening a lot of times when you teach young DBs is about right here, instead of working with their hips. My hips are pointed this way. I'm going to open up that way. Instead, they want to work back around. And a good way that I do this is I have them walk with me. So if I have a kid that's really struggling with the zone turn, I have them walk with me. So as we're walking, okay, what I'll tell them to do is I'll say, okay, turn to me. So I'll get about 2 yards from them and I'll say, okay, man turn from our open stance. Okay, and what ends up happening is because my hips are pointed inside, I'm going to end up having to work actually back and around. And by that time, now I'm in front of you. Okay, now we're in chase mode. Right? But instead, if we're walking with me and now I zone turn, now I'm on top and now the receiver is capped. So I've actually worked it. And that is a great visual for them to understand. Let's slow the drill down first. Let's understand why we're doing that. I think the athletes nowadays, you can't just be like, hey, this is the way we're doing it. Okay, that's great, coach, but how is this actually helping me? What is the difference? I feel more comfortable man turning. Why should I not be man turning from an open stance? Well, because as you do that, you're actually elongating your break and drive on that receiver. You're actually making it harder, and now you're putting yourself into chase mode. Whereas if you just zone over top, boom, get my head around, now I can see that near hip. Now I've capped a receiver, and now I'm in a better position to do that. I think also too, right here, if he were to come back inside, so let's say he kind of shows a little slant or a fade, and then he tries to dig me back out this way. All I've got to do is put this back foot in the ground, and now I'm still inside leverage. So if he were to come back, I would still be able to cap that. And so that's why we teach it like that. Okay, now let's work the slant, shoulder square. You can see all I have to do is keep my foot in the ground. So as he's working off, he makes that jab step. Now I'm breaking and driving. Notice how my eyes are down. I'm staying on that top shoulder, and I'm still inside of the receiver. Okay, so again, let's go through the top. Chop, chop. Notice how far I'm at 6 yards. I teach that alignment at 6 yards inside eye. Notice where I am when he makes that break. 1, 2, 3, break. Okay, I've only gone maybe 2 yards. Not even. I'm now at, it looks like to be about 7 or 8 yards. So I'm not even that far. I look like I'm at kind of that, I'm at the point of the number, right? So I'm not bailed out. I haven't bailed out. I've got feet hot. Okay. I'm reading through 3, right? That's our 3 steps. 1, 2, 3, plant drive. Now I'm working down, explode through the receiver, go and meet him on the top shoulder. We call that a cap, a top that route, cap that thing, press it back down to the line of scrimmage. And that way they can't run the slant. So I'm now we've seen the fade and now we've seen the slant. The way that you practice this is exactly this. You get them in this position. You stand behind the DB so you can see him, seeing his view. I think that's another key thing as coaches that we can do is be in the same position that they are in. Now I know it's not as easy for like D-line coaches to get right there at the linebacker depth to really watch that. I do think for DBs though, it's really telling when you can stand 10 yards behind them and you can see the hip tilt, you can see where their eyes are, you can see where their head angle is, and you know what the route is because you're giving it. I tell them you either run a slant or you run a fade. That's the two routes that I start out with. And so we're either driving on the slant or we're zone turning and capping the fade, getting in phase and pressing that hip, pressing it to the sideline. So that's an easy drill that you can do. And when you're teaching it to your DBs, is just look, hey, we're going to get in this and we're going to work each other. Okay, get them in partners of, you know, your 2 starting corners should be working together, your 2 backups should be working together, and then so on and so forth down that line. And then they're rotating every time. When I'm doing this, I try and go one day on the right hash, the other day on the left hash. That way we're switching sides and we don't have to switch during practice. So as you're doing this, you know, be thinking of those things too. So you're not always working the same side. So again, we've seen zone turn for the fade. We've seen break and drive for the slant. Now let's get into some film here. Okay, we're watching the corner at the top. This is a really good example of sliding out. Okay, he's going to slide out. He sees the receiver break, so it's short. 1, 2, break and drive. Notice how he stays underneath. Okay, would like to see more of a plant and drive. I don't like that second foot coming back, but he does break and drive. Now he's down. He can trigger on the ball. Okay, it's almost as a pick. So again, nice look at that. Break, drive on the ball, coming back down. Okay, so a good look at what a good stance looks like, and then the 3 shuffles or 3 slides. Okay, 1, 2, 3, break, drive. Again, don't like the jump back. That's why he hops back. But you can see from that crouch stance, he stays relatively nice, break and drive on the ball. Okay, both corners are going to utilize this. Let's look at the one on the top first. Nice job with the proactive step. Shuffle, shuffle. He gets an inside stem. Okay, he turns a little bit too early. Okay, so I don't like this, but you can see the shuffle. 1, 2, 3 before he opens up. Right here, he's not getting pressed. He could easily stay square. And I think it's always important to when we're doing this is to also go over this for kids so that they understand. You know, hey, look, we don't want to just open up. He's not pressing. Okay, he's not pressing me vertical. You can see how the receiver raises up tall to then hammer down. Okay, now I get lost. At least we get a nice center field turn and he's back up. Now let's look at the bottom. 1, 2, 3. Okay, again, he feels like it's going vertical. So what does he do? He opens up, right? We cross over. Now here, I would prefer that he stays square. It's another example of why, hey, I don't need to just fade out. That's another thing. And I put this in here because that's another thing that DBs tend to have when they're young and they're learning this is like, okay, now I'm just going to go ahead and, okay, I'm going to zone turn, but I'm going to zone turn so that I open up, right? We don't want that. Okay. This isn't a bail technique. You're already 6 yards, 7 yards off the ball. You don't need the bail technique. We're not pressing to a bail. So right here, he 1, 2, 3. I really like this with the proactive step. Gets inside leverage. He sees a speed release. Okay. Plant, drive back down on the ball. Okay. Almost gets the pick. Now I told him in film the next day is, man, if you would have just stayed square, you would have had a pick six. This would have been a pick six. This is again, so this is why it's a missed opportunity. This is why we don't just zone turn at the first sign of a vertical. Okay. If they know you're off, to use the words of my friend Dub Maddox, if we're capping, we're snapping, right? If they're capping, we're snapping. So if as a DB, if we're capping the receiver and we're doing a good job, they're going to snap that thing off. Okay, most offenses now, they're going to have they're either going to throw the back shoulder fade or they're going to convert it into a comeback route. So we've got to be prepared for that as DBs. So if we're capped, like right here, that kid's not pressing me. I don't need a turn. Okay. Once he sits, now I sit and I'm in a better position to come break and drive on that ball and probably make a pick. Watching the corner at the bottom, proactive step, working that slide, and he stays square. So he's getting an underneath route from the beginning. He stays square and he goes and he tries to go cap that route. Okay, I would prefer that he keeps those shoulders square and really press down on that receiver, but he's got help inside. So you can see right now how that looks. That looks really nice. 1, 2, 3. He comes a little bit up. See how his butt rises, and he kind of gets into more of a standing, kind of loses that leverage of his nose over toes. Okay, but you can see the break and drive, the snap down. Instead of snapping at a 90, try and snap down at a little bit of an angle down and to play that a little bit better. Okay, watching the corner up top. Three slides, feet are in the ground. Okay, he gets a break. What I like about this is he converts it into a sail technique. So just so we understand the scenario here, this is later in the game's first down, but it's later in the game. They're trying to score. I think it's the end of the half. They're trying to score. So you can see right now he sees the vertical at 2. Now he's going to keep position maintenance on that and work back to the receiver once the quarterback's in duress. So it's a good look at, again, 1, 2, 3. I get a hitch, eyes open to the receiver and to the quarterback. I'm getting a vertical, okay, with a sit down. So I know this is probably smash. So I'm going to sail technique, work back to the receiver when the quarterback's in duress. Okay, looking at both corners, we'll start up at the top. Notice how we're wide, but he's staying connected to the numbers. Proactive step inside, keeps his feet square, nice shuffle, okay? And he stays connected to the hip. Now, single receiver, wide, we don't necessarily have to zone turn this back in. He's getting stemmed inside, so he squares up. Now he snaps his hips through. Eyes on the bottom hip, get to cut off. So that's a good job right there. Let's look at the bottom DB right here. 1, 2, 3. Now he's in the pedal. Okay. So this is a kid that could really pedal. Okay. This is more of a kick stepper, and I'll talk about the kick step technique later on in the clinic. But this is an example of a kid that he was a really good peddler. Okay, but to get his read steps, to slow him down, that was his problem, is that he would pedal out too quickly, and we were getting killed on underneath routes. And so one of the things that I really worked with him throughout the entire year was, we've got to slow it down. We've got to slow it down. And one way you can do that is with that slide technique. 1, 2, 3. He sees these two guys were getting a switch vertical right here, and so he transitions into a pedal and starts fading back out to the receiver. So that's a good example right there. That's a good example right there of slide to back pedal, understanding how routes are relating to each other. Here's an example up top. This is a really good example of using that slide technique. Okay, right there, slide technique. He's going vertical. Now I'm going to work into the hip. Now, ball's out. Okay, so he doesn't snap it. So he doesn't snap his head down and sees the ball. I would like a little quicker transition right here to go ahead, peek. Okay, quarterback is looking that way. So I want to make sure that I get my head back around and get in there, but we see ball thrown and we kind of slow it down. I would prefer though, again, making sure I get my head back around and I really pin that hit and pin him to the sideline, even though the ball is thrown. This technique works in trips coverage as well. And so what this example right here is our nickel in trips coverage. It's the same technique. Our divider states that he needs to be outside. So he's an outside leverage and he's going to use the slide technique. A little too herky jerky for me. See how he ends up on his heels. Would rather it be pressing with the toe, but you can see now he transitions. He's getting a vertical release inside. He's going to transition to the hip. He's going to cap that. This is a great job of capping the post. Okay, we end up getting a double post. Both DBs are in perfect formation. So again, let's watch that. The nickel right here, slide, open the hips, cap the post. Great job. Hey, corner at the bottom. Nice job right here, keeping those feet hot. You can see how they're hot. Feet are in the ground. He's getting a vertical, so he opens up. He gets pressed. He's got two verticals right here. Okay. Once he feels that, now he snaps down and he can close that off. Okay. So that's another good example of using that slide technique. Going back to the beginning. 1, 2, 3. Okay. I feel him going vertical. I'm going to open up. Now I'm going to snap back down because I'm getting double vertical. So I'm thinking somebody's probably breaking out. If you get two verticals into the sideline, and that guy's not bending back into the middle of the field, then I know I'm either getting a corner and a sit down or I'm getting a vertical with a sail route. So if you're teaching an open stance, static open stance, or you're playing loose coverage, or you're playing like sticks coverage, and you want to go from an open stance, this is a great way to do this in cover 2, what we call cloud. So again, hinge open, sail technique, eyes on the near hip. Notice how because he stayed low, he's able to just plant and drive, break down on the ball. Great job right there. So now we've gone through the open stance. We've gone through the techniques. We've watched some film. Now we're going to transition into the closed stance and go kind of through the different techniques that we use for pressing closed stance, which would be seen more in like catch coverage, or your cover 2 schemes.